So, Resident Evil 2, the original on the PlayStation 1, was really the only classic style Resident Evil game I've really put substantial amount of time into. Um, and really, when I played the original Resident Evil 2, it was as a PS1 classic back when I downloaded it as a PS1 classic on the PS3. So I never played like the originals, and really the first like Resident Evil game I played was actually 4 on the GameCube. And some that's people that's maybe listened to some of my previous podcasting antics, I suppose. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. And again, that comes from really having no prior knowledge of the series. And again, playing Resident Evil 4 numerous times made me kind of want to go back and play the original Resident Evil 2. So when I actually beat Resident Evil 2, I only ended up playing Leon A, because I think when I started Claire B, I think I ran into, and as we'll get into later, Mr. X and Tyrant. I immediately just said, like, nope, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So when Resident Evil 2 Remake was finally been talked about for a while, but when it was finally shown off back at E3 this past year, it was pretty exciting to want to go back to that. And I actually fully expected Resident Evil 2 to be the remake to be like a original RE remake that was on the GameCube and then later came to next-gen consoles. I expected that kind of game. I thought it was maybe only going to be like $20, $30. I thought it was still going to be its isometric views, like very classic kind of style. Did not expect it to be kind of from the ground up in the Resident Evil 7 engine. But I have completed the game. I have even platinumed the game. Not really sure where this conversation's going to take me, but really just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on a lot of it and why I think it's a great game. If I had to like rate it on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'd probably give it like an 8, 8.5. But I don't think it's fantastic, and probably in the end prefer Resident Evil 7 to this game. So I started off my first playthrough on the normal difficulty, and I will admit I ended up just running into so many hurdles because I like to kind of experiment a lot, experimenting like where I can shoot and that kind of stuff. And of course, when you're experimenting, you're wasting ammo, and that didn't really work out for me. So there were numerous problems I came into with Resident Evil 2. One of them being kind of as I was playing the original Resident Evil 2 back in the day, was leaving characters for another. So I came through numerous sections where I thought, okay, well, here's this kind of powered up weapon. Okay, I kind of want to leave this because if Claire, in the next scenario, she might need this. So I left. I didn't end up leaving him. But I really contemplated, like, I feel like I should leave this because, like, I'm literally leaving nothing for Claire on her other run to get some of the bonus extras, which, come to find out, that actually was not even a problem at all. And didn't really see anything about one scenario affecting the other. Another way where I was really kind of came to mind a lot with that was when you're kind of in the underground area, kind of by the parking lot where the dogs are at, in the Raccoon City police station. So kind of like in the kennel area, you see a lot of the zombie dogs and they're behind cages. And so this is kind of myself psyching myself out. I think it's probably best to shoot the zombie dogs in the cages because if you don't, they end up breaking out later. But I almost wanted to leave them because I knew there was the gameplay scenario of Claire where she's going through there and there's lickers there instead. And of course, I was immediately like psyching myself out saying, okay, well, there's dogs in these cages, and well, the lickers, they hear via sound. So if I leave these dogs in Leon A, they'll show up in Claire B. And when I'm going through the section where I'm supposed to sneak around the lickers, the dogs will just be making so much noise, and the lickers will be all over the place. They won't even hear my footsteps, and that'll be fine. Really kind of psyching myself out. But then, I go play Claire B, and the dogs aren't even there, and I didn't even kill the dogs in Leon A in another run. It doesn't matter. They just break out anyways. So some of those, like, moments were kind of like personal disappointments, I suppose. Which that kind of I really wanted more out of it, which I didn't get. Just trying to think about, I guess even like running off back of that is like plot holes between like the A and B run. So again, this is going to be with spoilers. Again, I'll have this in the title of the video. Um, just multiple moments where you do a Leon A run, then a Claire B run, and say probably 3 of the Birkin boss fights are the exact same. It doesn't matter really which run you're doing, they all happen the same way. So the biggest one is when you're fighting Birkin round 3, which they call it stage 3. You're kind of in the lab on the platform that gets descended. I mean, Annette Birkin shows up the same way both times. So it doesn't matter if you show up and she shoots the kind of acid rounds into him and then dies, but then comes back for Leon's scenario and is perfectly fine again, and the thing happens again. Like, it's really confusing, and I feel like doesn't really make much sense. It really doesn't. So I try not to put too much emphasis on that, I suppose, but was pretty disappointed where some of the story in that kind of area, like kind of where it goes, I suppose. And even with the Birkin boss fights, I really just kind of got tired of them. So if you think about it, every single boss fight in the game is Birkin again, except Leon's final boss, if you're playing Leon A, which is the Super Tyrant, which is kind of like a genetically mutated tyrant. But other than that, all of the other different runs have all of this. Like if you play a Claire A or even a Claire B, you're only fighting William Birkin every single time, because even stage 5 B, the B scenario, is just William Birkin on a train. So some of that's really disappointing to me at least. But kind of to get into some of the positives, I know I'm just kind of talking negatively on it. I think it's an absolutely beautiful game. There's just so much detail put into it, and I think just seeing the RE engine from a new perspective is really neat. Whereas Resident Evil 7, you're just seeing it first person. But being able to see so much more geometry, seeing all the different things happening around you, I think in that respect, it's definitely beautiful. Just how the zombies kind of crawl over things, how they fall over things, they can fall on one another, the different limbs that you can kind of cut off, and how if you don't kind of explode their head, they'll get back up and start crawling after you again. Some of that's really good. Some of the best kind of, I would almost say, polish, you see in a video game. And I definitely think the RE engine they made for these past 2 games have really helped in that respect. So kind of going individually, a lot of the puzzles are pretty much the same puzzles, just depending if you're doing an A or a B run. They just have little different scenarios. Filling the fluid up, the chemical to disperse in the lab, just kind of getting the little medallions to fit to get into the underground. A lot of that's pretty much the same, and again, that's disappointing because there really isn't any standalone puzzles, and really a B scenario just feels like the A scenario, just with a little bit different variation. The biggest one I can think of off the top of my head is the Tyrant, which we'll get to. He shows up so much earlier than the first scenario, and I really like how they kind of introduce him. He's just kind of like walks right through the hallway, just like, oh, did not expect to have you here. I feel like I could kind of expect it in the A run where he lifts up the helicopter, and that's kind of your script scenario, I suppose. But the B run, he just really just out of nowhere just shows up, and that's neat. So to kind of talk about him a little bit, I liked Tyrant. I think he was pretty scary, just kind of constantly being everywhere. I think one of the best moment in the game, just in a gameplay perspective, was the moment of, okay, dang, he's here in front of the helicopter. He lifts the helicopter, you run around and you get through. You go back to the main lobby, and you really do kind of have that, okay, like, I'm safe. Like, this is, like, the main area. Nothing bad's gonna happen here. No, like, zombies aren't gonna get in here, that kind of stuff. And then just like, I'm just sitting there, walking around thinking like, where do I want to go next? I was kind of in the item box, taking my time, depending on what you're doing, or if you'd been there currently or previously. Marvin Brenna, the police officer that you're with, ends up turning into a zombie. But just the fact that he just like opens the door from like where you came and just starts walking at you again really just had one of those like, nope, I'm not doing this. Do not do this to me right now kind of moments. And I think that's a great moment. It's a great kind of frustrating moment, the way I'd put it. But again, kind of with the experimentation things of it, I was maybe even thinking like, can you kill Tyrant? Is like there multiple Tyrants? Because it was always kind of my understanding that there were multiple Tyrants, so I assumed if I killed one, there would be another one after me, but maybe it'd give me a little bit more time. And in a gameplay perspective, one thing I really loved was when I downed Tyrant and he finally goes down onto a knee and he puts his hand on the ground, either Claire or Leon will say like, oh, better get a move on. And I'm so glad they have that, because as me experimenting, I absolutely just would have stayed there, just continued to pump rounds into him. Because to me, that would be like, oh, okay, well, this is like that boss fight moment where like, okay, he's down, this is his weak spot. Now you gotta like lay into him. So when they come on and they say like, oh, better get a move on, like better get moving, like that means like, okay, I need to leave right now. Like I can't sit here and just pump all my ammo into him. So that moment leads into kind of the hardest part of the game. I would say, even playing as hardcore run, is trying to run around different parts of the police station, because now Lickers and other zombies are in new areas, and trying to get the, I don't know, kind of like a winch thing to move the bookcases. And I think that's where I've mostly heard the most frustration about this game, is trying to move the bookcases while Tyrant is running after you. And where you do kind of have to just kind of make laps around. And this is where the Tyrant ended up becoming good frustrating, I guess I would say, into like really annoying frustrating. So I've always found it better to like move as many of the bookcases as you can before that moment, just because, you don't have much time to move a bookcase, and the animation's real slow, and there's other zombies that keep getting up, even if you've shot them multiple times, but their head hasn't exploded. That's a part where I think leads to a lot of frustration. It definitely led to mine as well. Because even replaying that section, through my multiple runs, I like it was really where I just was saying like, okay, this is the worst section of the game. Other than this and the underground area in the sewer where you either have to get the king and queen plugs and you get the spark shot or the chemical flamethrower, I would say those are the two moments. Those are the two sections of the game that are the most frustrating. Yeah, you end up getting the bookcase, and you do end up finding out that there are rooms that the Tyrant will not go into. So one of them, I think at least in the Claire run, is Brian Irons' office. I don't think he goes in there. He doesn't go into the Stars, I guess, like headquarters room, and he does not go into the clock tower room either. So he kind of ends up patrolling outside that, but it's really nice that, okay, like, I guess there is a little bit of a safe space that you could go into. So I appreciate that. But I don't really have a ton else to say about Tyrant, other than the fact that recently when I was thinking about what I wanted to say during kind of this little podcast video thing, I think I think I felt more fear out of like Jack and Marguerite Baker, I think where their name is, from Resident Evil 7 than what I felt with Tyrant. When Jack showed up, or Marguerite, I was really just like, oh my gosh. Especially with Jack, because Marguerite, I think you kind of see her and you could get away from her pretty easily. Jack definitely, I feel like he chases you at a much faster pace. And I feel like he has just a lot of different kind of, either be animations or different things he can do with the environment that makes him a little bit more scary. Tyrant, to me, just kind of basically follows in your footsteps and just kind of does what you do. They both have breaking through the wall segments, which I found. I think it might only happen in the B scenario runs, but he ends up breaking through the door that has the double-sided mirror. That's an iconic part in the first game, where he breaks through the press room, which also creates like a fantastic shortcut, which I'm super happy about. But other than that, like it's pretty much the same, and obviously if they do a Resident Evil 3 kind of thing at some point, a remake, I'm sure the Nemesis will be the exact same way, I suppose. But yeah, not super happy Tyrant, just kind of how he is. I think he looks cool. They have people doing the X Gun Give It To You like DMC song like when he shows up. I think those are so funny. And like they have like little videos or like the part where it's like knock knock something like that, and then like Tyrant just like opens the door and walks through. I think those are super funny moments, which I think is kind of like a great little viral thing going on. But yeah, in that respect, kind of just as terrifying monsters coming after you, I would still say Resident Evil 7. I had a lot more fear with, like, even just thinking about it right now, like thinking about Jack Baker like following you, like oh, I kind of want to replay 7, but I really don't want to deal with that again. You know, where I feel like I could just go play Resident Evil 2 and play it again right now and be like, oh yeah, there's Tyrant again. This is that part of the game. So going into kind of maybe touch on a little bit, but specifics on gameplay stuff. Start with Leon. He's the one I played first. And you do have the Ada section where she runs around, has a little bit of gun, and it's like a little bit of puzzle solving with her EMP or EM visualizer or something like that. EMF visualizer, something like that. She's basically like overloading and switching the power between things. Like you're breaking down like either like 3 fans in her short little section, which is kind of neat, I guess. I would have loved more Ada moments. I would have loved, instead of 4th Survivor, I would have loved kind of like Assignment Ada like we had in Resident Evil 4, or even like Separate Ways. I think that'd be super cool. But yeah, not much to say even about Ada's thing. It's really just kind of a miniature puzzle solving kind of moment. I think Sherry's is a little bit more interesting on Claire's side, because it's just like a hide and seek thing from Irons, where, you know, Irons is just basically like a psychopath, basically, and you're just a little girl running away from him. It kind of takes place in an orphanage. It's kind of scary. But you do actually see Catherine Warren, I believe is her name, in Sherry's segment, which is the mayor's daughter that Brian Irons gets a hold of and like wants to taxidermy her, stuff like that. Like, kind of, it's touched on more in the original Resident Evil 2, and we do have the Ghost Survivors DLC coming out, which I think apparently it's played like what if scenarios, but I'm sure we're going to hear more about Catherine Warren in that instance. Just as in Leon's story, you do end up seeing the gun store owner, and I think it's like the gun store owner part, just that little cutscene, is probably one of the best moments of the game for me, because it shows just so much more of a human side to kind of the conflict going on. And they're like, oh, okay, you got a police officer, you got this mercenary, or like that's undercover, that's trying to impersonate an FBI agent, but you really see some of the like human personal stories going on, which felt very Last of Us-y to me when you ran into the gun store owner. It's just like, you know, this is just the reality of the situation. These are like normal, everyday people and what they're dealing with kind of in this moment. So that was a very kind of sad moment. And also the gun store owner also is a part of the Ghost Survivors DLC. So I expect probably a bunch of ammo and different guns to be able to shoot some zombies and get away, I suppose. Where I think maybe Catherine Warren might be more of a hide and seek kind of thing, just to add some variety. The gun store owner might just be, hey, we're just gonna go blast through some zombies, I guess. A couple other moments that I was disappointed with, and again, I think it's kind of my own fault, because I'm trying not to compare this to like Resident Evil 7, and kind of with two ideas together, I tried to take this as a Resident Evil 2 remake and like a reimagining, and not Resident Evil 8, if that makes sense, like a brand new entry in the series. You know, in some ways that, you know, like, okay, you come across VHS tapes in this game. You come across 2 of them. You see through like some of the Umbrella agents when they're like shooting William Birkin and stuff like that, and like somebody mutating. I thought when I came across like a couple of those VHS tapes, my immediate thought was, okay, we're gonna get to like do like a gameplay segment of somebody, just like how in Resident Evil 7 you got, I can't remember one of the main guys' name you played in the first videotape, you played it with him later, but then you also had the girlfriend, I guess I can't remember, who was trying to escape Marguerite Baker. You have her in there as well as like one of the videotapes where you play as that in a gameplay moment. And you didn't have that in Resident Evil 2, so I was really kind of disappointed. I thought, like, okay, this is like a great way to like put some of the like Umbrella story, like the mercenaries. Like, this is a great way. Like, what if like you were playing as the guy who ended up shooting William Birkin? Like, that would have been great. Like, those like little moments would have been so cool. But no, they didn't do it. It was just kind of like a first-person cutscene. Claire kind of has some moments like, well, glad I watched that, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so just little things that I was trying not to compare it, I guess, to a new entry in the series. But with that, I don't really have a ton else to maybe mention about the story. I think it's done really well, like, just kind of the gameplay aspect of it, I guess I should say. Just how you get from one location to another, like with the tram or one. I think the lab is really neat, even though it seems really small for a big laboratory. There's like, obviously you think like, okay, there's obviously much bigger places that you haven't seen yet, I guess. But in terms of story, I don't really think it's all that great. I think Ada and Leon is neat. I think Claire and Sherry are good. I think they do good-ish with showing kind of a psychopath that Brian Irons is. I think they could have gone a little bit more in the psychotic direction. Even thinking about like William and Annette, I don't really feel like lives up to kind of the stuff you hear about. I don't think you get that much on William, but then I also think just Annette is just like, okay, who cares kind of thing. I was not impressed with Annette on screen, and I think maybe that's part of the point where like she doesn't care about Sherry. You know, she has things just like, oh, I'm too busy, I can't be dealing with this. There's parts where she's just making notes on about some zombies when when Claire is just trying to get her attention. Even when, you know, kind of one of the penultimate boss fights where you're either Leon or Claire, and Annette shows up to kind of try and subdue William. Like, just playing them again, I'm just like, those moments again, I'm like, I just really want to skip. I'm gonna skip this cutscene. Like, I just do not care about really Annette and her character for some reason. And again, maybe that's the point, but I think she's probably the worst character and like the most forgettable in the entire game. Which, kind of talking about moments I wish they'd capitalize a little bit more on. There's a moment where Ada is clearly on the phone with somebody when Leon gets shot trying to protect Ada, and, you know, that begins the Ada gameplay segment. Ada is clearly talking to somebody on the phone, which I think we could probably all assume it's Wesker, but you never see anything about that ever again. You do see a little bit, you know, Leon lets her go, and obviously, oh, Ada dies, but, you know, the virus is down there too. Then the rocket launcher shows up with Leon at the final fight, and you have that little shot of Ada say, like, we'll call it even or whatnot. But yeah, I think an assignment Ada would have gone really far to kind of do some cool things with that. And I do wished that Resident Evil 2 maybe like would have teased something in a return for like a Resident Evil 8. I mean, like, okay, here was like this big kind of thing that happened that we're going to create in Resident Evil 2 that might end up being like, hey, like the main other games never touched on this. Maybe this could be like a big story point going forward, but you never see that as well. We do get a little bit of a tease, but at the very end of the game, when at the B scenario where you're walking down the street, you're with Claire, Sherry, and Leon, I was clearly expecting a Nemesis or like Resident Evil 3 tease or something like that at the very end for like a Resident Evil 3 remake. And I know there's like some rumors that that's currently in development, and of course people are going to say that probably. And I know Capcom's come out and said like, hey, you know, if there's a demand for it, we'll consider making it. So I think that's going to be a pretty obvious thing to go to next. But I was clearly expecting some little shot of like Jill, like Valentine, like picking up a Stars hat or something along those lines for a tease. Which we do get a little bit of in the DLC, not DLC, but extra bonus mode that you unlock after beating both scenarios, called the Fourth Survivor, which is kind of weird why they call it Fourth Survivor, because technically, as we know, Ada survives, so Hunk would clearly be the fifth survivor. But I guess in that terms, they don't know that Ada survived, so it's just weird. Like, it should be the fifth survivor. We all know Ada survives. All that stuff. She's in all the other Resident Evils. Should be the fifth survivor. Just she wasn't at the very end, so they're calling him the fourth. Which Fourth Survivor is pretty neat. It took me a few tries to complete it, and it really is kind of a crappy feeling. Like, once you get like right to the end and you think you're almost there, and then you die, and you're like, okay, well, what if I retry? And you're like all the way back at the sewer. And again, it only took me like 10 minutes, I think, to get through it. But it is kind of a rough feeling to be like, oh, now I gotta start all the way over again. But you do get a little bit of a tease in Fourth Survivor that was like Nighthawk, which is the guy trying to pick you up or something like that, ends up saying like they've ordered a full cleanup on Raccoon City, basically meaning, hey, they're gonna nuke the place. And that's kind of like a backdrop of Resident Evil 3. So I think that's a little bit of a nod and a reference. I was really disappointed with the ending of Fourth Survivor also. I'm like, oh man, we're going to get some like cool Hunk reveal or something like that. But it's Hunk just opening the front gate and he's like, why did you return? He's like, oh, I just wanted to meet the Grim Reaper. And like, that's it. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. Did not, I almost wanted to say waste, but I did not have much time with Tofu Survivor. I just didn't really care. You're just basically running through Fourth Survivor again, but you have different kinds of tofu, and you have like different weapon layouts, or loadouts, I guess I should say. So I never even beat the other first Tofu one where you just have all the knives. I just didn't really feel like I wanted to go through that. It was kind of at that point I'd already platinumed the game, which maybe I can talk a little bit about that. It's not too bad once you just know what you're doing, especially looking at the trophy list. You're like, man, platinum this game, like beating it on hardcore, beating standard, and all that stuff with an S rank. It really is not bad once you know what the puzzles are. And I did have like a little kind of a cheat sheet for the puzzles, being like, okay, I'm at this place, okay, I can just do this real quick. A moment can be when you're in the lab where you have to input the codes to unlock the kind of serum mixture, and then also opening that underground part of the lab, kind of when you're in like the second wing of the lab. You can just walk up to the console and just input both of the codes at the same time and not have to go find the trophy and then turn it upside down and then get the other one and then try and look at it. You can just kind of immediately put in both codes right there. Which it really streamlines a lot of the game. Like, okay, I know where to go, I know what to do. It's just doing those moments in as fast as possible without running into a whole bunch of things. And really getting an S or even an S plus rank does not even rely upon, like, did you get all the weapons? Did you get all the upgrades? Kind of something that a Metroid would do. It's basically, how fast did you beat the game? I think even for S rank on one of them, I think you got to beat in like 2 hours, 30 minutes, something like that, which really isn't bad at all to do. You don't have to get everything, that kind of stuff. So it's not bad at all. I'd recommend it. And it's nothing as crazy as Madhouse difficulty, and hardcore is nothing like Madhouse difficulty for Resident Evil 7. So even with hardcore, all the things happen the same, just tougher enemies. You have to use an ink ribbon when you save, compared to Madhouse, where kind of the layout of the game is kind of changed around, where you have to do different things and different tasks in different order. So in that respect, it's not It's not bad. And plus, even if you, so if you like S rank on standard, you get an unlimited samurai edge handgun with like unlimited ammo, and it's got 15 shots. That'll absolutely help when you do your first hardcore run. And then when you go back and do another hardcore run with either Leon or Claire, you have to do one for each character. So if you S rank a hardcore run, you get an unlimited like submachine gun that Hunk uses in the Four Survivors. So you can basically just run around and use that thing on all the bosses, and it takes people out super easy, which isn't tough at all. And then one of the other ones is kind of the tougher trophies is not using the item box for the game, and not using a like an herb or like a healing item. So it's easy to do on like the assisted difficulty, because if you're in the danger area on assisted, after a little bit of time, you'll automatically raised back up to caution. So that's pretty easy to go through without not using a healing item. But the other tougher one is not opening the item box. So you could think, okay, well, I have an unlimited like submachine gun. Don't need to grab ammo. I don't need to grab gunpowder, some of these other weapons. But you can't get those weapons unless you open the item box, which is really kind of a clever way to do that. But I ended up doing the not using a healing item and not opening the item box in one run together. And a lot of that is just picking the necessities that you need, and of course just getting all of the like ammo pouch upgrades or whatever, like the backpack upgrades. But clearly knowing that, hey, I'm leaving this gunpowder here, or I'm leaving this gun ammo here, so that, you know, instead of picking it up and then, oh, okay, now I have to discard it, I'm going to leave this here, and then if I need it, I'm going to come back for it. So basically that run is just making sure you don't pick up literally every single thing you need at the exact time you see it, which is tough for me because I'm a collectible kind of guy. I like collecting things. Like even if there's coins that I don't need or something in a game, like I'm still going to go pick them up. But yeah, with all that said, I don't really have a ton much else to say about Resident Evil 2, the remake that it was. I think some of the costumes are cool. I know the like classic polygon kind of models I think are being patched in at some point. And then there's also the Ghost Survivors DLC that'll add some more stuff. But for me personally, like getting the Platinum Trophy, not really caring to do any more tofu stuff. I think I'm pretty much done with the game. Again, I think it's enjoyable. I think it's a great game. I think there's definitely some things in the game that leave a lot to be desired, either be in terms of story or like the difference between the A and the B scenarios. I think on its own, I think it's a great game, but I think there are certainly things that Resident Evil 7 does better than Resident Evil 2. So if I had somebody come to me right now and ask like which game would you prefer, like hey, I want to pick a Resident Evil, what do I do? I would say pick up Resident Evil 7, even though it's a couple of the things I would give to Resident Evil 2 would just be kind of like the limb stuff, like with the zombies and how they get up. And I think some of the puzzles are a little bit better in Resident Evil 2 than Resident Evil 7. But I think as a kind of complete package, with just depth and variety and story as well, as that's a big part for me, I would prefer Resident Evil 7 over Resident Evil 2. But yeah, I'm not really wasn't really sure how to kind of approach this. I kind of had thoughts of how I wanted to maybe talk about it, and I know kind of some of this was just kind of rambling, but that's kind of what a lot of my videos are, though. But definitely let me know what kind of thoughts you have on it. I know it's kind of felt kind of sour and damper, I guess. It's just I think there are great moments to the game, but I wouldn't call it, you know, I don't know if at the end of the year I would call it one of my games of the year. Obviously, we still have like 11 months left, so we'll see kind of how it ages. I think this will absolutely be in people's games of the year list at the end. I think it's getting really, really high reviews. I don't think I would give it as high of a review, but I still think it's a great game nonetheless. But again, let me know what you think. Just kind of anticipating Resident Evil 3, hopefully, at some point. And we'll see what they do for DLC. We'll see if, like, you know, the Ghost Survivors DLC or some other kind of DLC as we're talking about. But until then, I'm sure we have some more discussion videos, and I'll probably talk about this game here and there on different things that I'll do. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.